Oh,
It's a smell.
good. But
I
I think that's
really,
it.
no, I love that as soon as you started reading that, I thought, how fitting, um, how fitting for what's kind of been going on this week. And even when I was like prepping to lead this tonight, I was just thinking um that there's so many great tools in this book that you're gonna be able to learn and to use and to deal with situations like this. But thank you so much for sharing that. And I do love how you're so honest. And like, if you don't like the book, there's always people who don't like it. So don't be ashamed if you didn't. And taking what you want from it, that's going to be a huge part of tonight. Just taking what you need to get out of this book for for your practice and your training. Thank
I
you.
think this book is like super good for like the events right now. I had to like go back and reread some of it because I'm like, I don't want to fall into like the anger trap or, you know.
Totally. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Do you want to introduce yourself, Anna, since you're
Sure,
unmuted?
sure. I'm Anna. I'm usually an extended, but we didn't get our weekend C, so I'm doing a little bit of crossover work. And I've read the whole book and I love it. I basically like rewrote the whole thing in notes and scribbled all over my first copy, which unfortunately got destroyed because of I have four kids. So this one I'm like protecting. And I'm going through it all again and re-highlighting, and it's still as valuable the second time through. I have to say Ahimsa is probably the one that I resonate with the most and always have. And I like that that the peacefulness doesn't necessarily mean that we just like, or nonviolence, I should say, doesn't mean that we don't stand up for people. It just means that we're not harming. So I like that.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And we'll learn about how ahimsa is kind of like the one that you always come back to. When you can't practice the others, that's the one that we always come back to. Awesome. Laura,
Hi.
hi.
I enjoyed the book. I too reread part of it, I guess the first part, and I really resonated with either the Satya, I guess the truthfulness, and I'm not sure how to pronounce the other one, which is appreciation. So, but I think being authentic is, or trying to be authentic is where I'm trying to be, and speaking my truth and having a voice, which I'm trying to do. But also appreciating myself and how I communicate what I need to others. Sorry, and but that too resonated with me, and just appreciating life itself, uh, and trying to uh, I guess move on. I've had a lot of mishaps the last few months, so trying to move on and appreciate what I do have now is a huge thing for me. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Laura. And it's funny how those things happen when you
When
like
you
might
listen.
be through this training and finding your
Mhm,
voice as a teacher and just
mhm.
learning all these other tools. And it's a
But I
party
think it, I also think it goes deeper. I
Oh,
mean, there's a lot of
oh,
servicey stuff, but then when you really look at it and really, use the tools, I think it deepens your practice and just life in general. So
totally.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Laura.
You're welcome.
Rachel.
Hello, I'm Rachel. Um, my dog might start yapping because she doesn't like when I talk to someone that's not her. But I also really enjoyed the book. I think it's something that's going to be a useful tool kind of moving forward. Oh, stop. And whatnot. But I really resonated with contentment. Can you hear her whining?
I can.
No. Go say, yeah, this is my buddy. But anyway, hold on. Sorry. That's how all my work calls go too, by the way. But regardless, I get resonated with contentment. I just feel like I'm a pretty chill person in most situations, but it's not like a I'm not doing anything kind of chill. It's more of like it's an active practice and choosing to react in certain ways compared to like just letting things happen and being a part of whatever's going on in the world. So that's what I have to share. And I think there'll be parts I didn't reread it yet, but like even just getting through it, I liked the layout. I liked how there were reflection questions, and I liked the affirmations at the end, just like little tidbits in its own little summary for what we just read about.
Awesome. I love that. I love how you notice that it's like not necessarily sitting or like, well, it is an active practice, but it's also your reaction to those things is kind of what that practice can look like a lot of the times. Awesome. BB.
Hi guys. So my name is Bethia. I must have put BB as a nickname at some point. I don't know when. But yeah, I have not finished the book yet. I'm gonna do a real big push and get it all done for our next one as well. But what I have gained from it, I have liked it, and I think I don't know, one thing I think it's really cool that Aaron has like crossed through and like I like this, I don't like this. Like that's just like, yeah, you can do that. Cause even I have never really had a great journaling practice, but this book has broken it down and I'm in a place now where it's like I do want to write and express myself. And we've all said, East Coast gals versus, the people pleasers of Colorado and the Midwest. And it's just a reminder to just be my authentic self, writing down, journaling, like not what the book wants me to write, and I can write as much or as little. I can kind of disagree and go somewhere else. So it's been a nice start for journaling for me. Ahimsa really hit home, and Satya too, that authenticity and doing no harm. I react a little too quickly to things and my mouth just goes. And I can be a very kind person, but I can be kind of mean too. My cousin and I have some differing views, and she stayed with me the last couple nights, and we have maybe some opposite views in some ways. And so I could tell she was getting upset, and we were both kind of back and forth, kind of defending our thoughts a bit. And I kind of stopped and she dropped it too. And we had a fantastic day. But it just got me thinking, like, do no harm. I didn't have to stand up like that. And I don't know her personal story and why some of the subjects hit her the way it did. Because one subject in particular, that has to do with women's bodies really hit her in an opposite way that it hit me. And now it makes me want to connect with her when we're not heated a little bit. And I want to see what's happened and if I can help her, if there's anything that's happened that I can just listen to her story and provide support. And I don't know, Ahimsa, I think everyone knows I'm in a little bit of a tattoo spree mood. I was like thinking like I can get Ahimsa on my knuckles. Like I love it. And I guess that's all I have to say about that.
I really
so-
like, oh, I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. Please go, Anna.
Oh, I just really like how you said, we can disagree on things. And like, I had a similar conversation with one of my friends, and we're lifelong friends. So neither one of us was like being mean to each other, but it was like, it's kind of like coming from it of a curiosity standpoint where you're like, why did this hit you so hard? And why do you feel that way about this particular thing? So that is, I gotta say, the yoga practice in yoga teacher training has made this time around a lot easier for me.
That's good. Yeah, that's cool. It takes practice.
It does, and it's lifelong, and it's every day. But thank you so much for sharing that, Bethia. It's Bethia, right? Am I saying that correct? Okay. Yeah, thank you so much for saying that. That takes a lot of guts to like, first of all, like be in that situation and then to share it and to recognize that like even though we disagree, there are conversations we can have that can help me understand. My cat's gonna walk right through this. You know, that are gonna allow me to understand your story. And that's such a huge thing that most people can't recognize. So thank you so much for sharing that. Gabby.
Hey, I really am enjoying reading this. I am 2/3 of the way through. I haven't started part 3 yet, but I'm a newbie to a lot of these concepts, and so I think that it's a really manageable. It's almost like a Cliff's Notes version, which I can appreciate. To just wrap my head around these ideas and words. And I love the exercises, even though I haven't done any of them. I like reading through it and knowing that I can go back and reference any of these things and do the exercises, when I'm sure I will reread it. There are some passages that I just have a hard time with, and I think that's I have a natural aversion to anything that has to do with religion or God, and so I know that in this context, anything that references the divine or anything spiritual, you can basically substitute, other words. It's not necessarily God, but still with this and the videos of yoga tradition and history and stuff, there's that constant return to it is a spiritual practice, and I just personally have a hard time with that. And it's just the doubt, the lack of faith on my part. But other than that, I'm really enjoying it. And yeah, ahimsa, I feel like kind of ties everything together. I think, Ben, you had mentioned truth in class on Tuesday, how it was like a bicycle wheel, and I kind of envision ahimsa at the center of this, and then the spokes coming out and the other things kind of tying all in together, the other concepts. And it all just kind of comes back or connects back to that ahimsa concept. So yeah.
You, Gabby, for sharing that. I think that that's really important to recognize, and just I just appreciate that you're recognizing that and like knowing that these parts I maybe need to put to the side or not practice necessarily as much as the other parts. But I hope tonight's discussion does. I don't know. I'm not even going to say that, but I do hope that like you just continue with that mindset of like, even though this isn't the dialogue that I need, you're still participating and acknowledging that. So thank you so much. I do appreciate that. Hannah.
Hi. Did I hear Hannah? Okay, yes. Okay, I'm Hannah. I enjoyed the book a lot. I actually started reading it like 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago. So I was like, I forgot everything. I loved it. And then, so I went back today and like I broke it down how the author did, which I loved, right? Because it's like 8 limbs. So in my mind, like when we think about 8 limbs of yoga, I thought it was like 8 things, but the way it was like yamas, which is like the internal part, and then niyamas, which is how do we connect with the world? And then not done yet. I started doing the devotion, going back to what Gabby said. I'm totally the opposite. So it's like this something that is true, like it's, I don't know, like I highlighted because he was like, oh, this is like really neat. in the part of asanas, the author was like, okay, a true yogi, it's not just the discipline, right, of the practice, because it takes discipline to be a yogi or to practice yoga, but it's like the devotion, because discipline can like fade over time, right? Like then becomes monotone, like a monotony, and you're like, what am I doing? Whatever. And then you just move on. But then having that devotion, having that like connection to a higher, and whatever that is for anybody, but like that higher force, like it keeps you, like it really is like this connection. I will call it connection because that's what it sounds to me. But I really enjoy it. I got the Audible, Greg, today because I was like, I forgot everything. I'm just gonna listen to it. So I started listening to Ahimsa, which is what resonates with me the most. I feel that everything stems from it. And especially now with the political climate and everything, there was a part when I was listening to it again today, the author was saying how if like global peace starts at individual peace. So if we are inside of ourselves, right, our thoughts, like if we're able to have peace within, and then share that peace with our families, our closest one, like if everybody were to do that, right, we'll live in another type of world. So I don't know. So I feel like nonviolence is like the answer to many things. And it is hard to do and it's hard to practice, especially like that. Going back to what Ben said on Tuesday, the negative thoughts, right? Like that's violence. Like when we're like violent against each other or ourselves, it's like, how do you break away from that? And but yeah, I really liked it too. It's I feel like it's very insightful. That's it.
Thank you,
Bye.
Hannah. I do like, yeah, there's a reason Ahimsa comes first. I'll just leave, we'll discuss more about that. But yes, there is a reason that Ahimsa is always practiced first, and there's a definite reason why it's the first one. And thank you for that speak on devotion. We'll talk a little bit about the Yoga Sutras tonight. And I have one that I think both you, everyone will resonate with in regards to how your practice does become firmly established with that connection or devotion to it. So I put a star next to that one to bring that up again. Alexis.
Hello. Like Rachel, I really resonated with the contentment. So the Santosha or Santosa?
Santosha. Yeah.
Santosha. I am a habitual complainer. Like me and my boyfriend have a running joke. If I'm sick, he'll be like, "How do you know if Alexis is sick?" And she'll tell you because I just, but there was a quote in here. It says, "The simplest way to begin is to stop complaining about the things that annoy us and gently accept the things that fall short of our desires." And I think it's really cool because it's a shift in your perspective. Because I think we've discussed this before, how our what we focus on gains power. So if we're focusing on the negative and the bad things, that's going to be at the forefront of your mind. So it's actually good that my boyfriend points this out because I've started to be very mindful of complaining, and I'll catch myself and I'll be like, okay, you know what? This is not great, but I'm fine. I'm not dying. But the whole book, I just think it was a kind of like a guideline on how anybody should live, everybody should live their lives, because it is, I don't know, it almost seems like common sense, but they're all things that do require work and patience. And I wish that I could just give this book out to people so that they could, practice peace on the roads, But yeah, I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Alexis. I always say every time I do this book club, I'm always like, if everybody could do teacher training or if everybody could just read this book, maybe it'd be a little bit. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Ashlyn.
Hi, I'm Ashlyn. I really like the book. I haven't finished it yet. I'm like halfway through part 2 right now. But so far, I think my favorite parts are actually, I know a lot of other people said it, but hi, Jerry. The peacefulness, especially the part where I can't remember which page it is or exactly how it says it, but internal peace comes before external peace. And in chapter 2, there's a part where, hold on, I think I highlighted it. There it is. It is easy to lose track of who we are and attempt to fit in and stay safe, which I took personally as like, if it is choosing between being your true self and staying safe in a situation, always choose to stay safe. Which I really appreciated because it's a running joke in my family that I will start like, not that this is a self-help book, but like a self-help book or a realization book or like that kind of genre of book and then get mad at it and stop 2 days later. Because I read this book with my younger sister who has a degree in sociology and psychology. So she'd be like, have you reached chapter 4 yet? And I'd be like, yeah, I just finished it. And she'd be like, did you know that was disproven like 10 years ago? And I'd be like, what? You can keep things to yourself, ma'am. So but also it was kind of comforting sometimes for her to come up and be like, did you like this part? And I'm like, no. And she's like, oh, that's because like it might not be true for you, or because specifically in Western society, we have these kind of thoughts versus in Eastern societies, they have those kinds of thoughts. So while you may not like it or it may not resonate with you, it doesn't make it any less true, which was kind of nice to hear because there were parts where I was like, well, that just seems like not holier than thou, but a little maybe more self-realized than I am. And she was like, that's not like, it's not necessarily because you're a bad person or because you aren't as good of a yogi or because you're never going to get there. It's because of like, she's like, it's because you have to be more familiar with these kind of practices versus these kinds. So that's why I really liked the first chapter and the first part about internal work rather than external work, because you have to understand what's in here before you can understand what's out there. And I really like that.
Thank you, Ashlyn. I think what you and Alexis said is kind of like when you do start to read more books like this, or you start to do more of these practices and you kind of like, it's a little scary because you like when you read that and you're like, oh no, that's me. I feel called out. Sometimes those are the ones that we like, even though it is difficult and it does bring things up. It's important. Like that realization is where you start the practice, right? And then when you like maybe those like chapter 4 didn't resonate with you because you still need to practice 1 and 2. And I just love that you're recognizing that and seeing that and acknowledging it. So thank you for sharing. We'll go Greg next.
Sorry, this is off my phone. So,
You're fine.
hi. Let's see. Had the audiobook, went through it pretty quick, and I'm rereading it because I feel like I missed a lot of it. Just got through it quick. But my initial thoughts when I started reading it were kind of like Ashlyn's, where it's like, oh great, another self-help book. Like I've read a lot of these. I don't know what I'm going to get out of this. And then also kind of like what Gabby was saying, anything divine and spiritual, I kind of just roll my eyes. I'm like, okay, well, this is gonna be a lot of wishy-washy, woo-woo, like let's make stuff up. But like, um, I'm a picky reader. But when I started reading it, big thing that struck out was, hey, this is a method to attain joy in your life. So I didn't know if they were trying to sell something or like what the purpose of joy is. I'm like, don't think that's the meaning of life is to be happy. Like happiness is kind of just a side effect. It's not the end goal. Um, so I didn't really get that. And then as I was reading, I just kept it in the back of my head. Like I didn't like that, but I just kept asking, like, what kind of joy are they talking about? Is it like the emotional joy that you get, just like, pure contentment, or is it just like satisfaction, meaning in life? What do they actually mean by the word joy? And um, I think I'm getting a clearer answer going through it another time. I think the chapter on Saucha was pretty clear. Just purity, keeping things simple, being minimalistic. Don't, the more you desire, the more you're going to want to desire, the more you shop on Amazon, the more you're going to want to shop on Amazon. And like that's a never-ending black hole that you can get sucked into. And just discipline, self-control, be kind to others. Basically, I'd sum up the whole book as don't be a jerk and you'll be happy. So that's what I got out of it.
I think that's a good place to be, Greg. We
Yeah.
will talk about like how this book is going to apply to your life, and if it doesn't, like that's fine. Like if there might be something else out there that makes more sense
No,
to you. So
I liked it. I liked it. I'm
good,
just, yeah, that's my
good.
impression.
No, I love that. Thank you. Karen.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Karen. Hi, y'all. Good to see you. Sorry I fell off earlier. I had to log on to another device, and I
Yep.
feel like my head is like in your faces. So if it's too close, I apologize, but I've got to charge it. Um, so I missed your introduction. I'm sorry. May I have your name?
Yeah, I'm Amy Kelly.
Okay.
Sorry,
Oh, thank you so much, Amy. Thank you.
of
And
course.
so I've gathered from what the goal is to talk about how the book resonates with us. I got through the five limbs out of the 8. I haven't finished it, and like Alexis said, she said a lot of great things. But one of the things that really resonated with me was that I feel like a lot of it is stuff that we already know to some degree. Like it's common sense. Like you should be nice to be like things we've learned in our journey, in our personal journey to be, functioning human being. And, but it is nice to be able to tap into it on a deeper level and to also be reminded of, just gratitude. I think is probably one of the ones that speaks to me the most. While I am grateful, it's nice to just have that inner dialogue and speak to it. One of the things I did discover is that I don't breathe correctly. Unless your abdomen's supposed to inflate when you inhale, I don't do that. So I did learn that, and I'll be practicing that. And one of the things that really struck me while I was reading this, because I was doing the power reading. I did a lot of power reading this week because of tonight. And I don't know, I just wrote it down, and I'm speaking to all of us, like, I just love the power of us. And I mean, all of us. I know it's going to make me a little emotional, but just like it was cool to know that we were all reading and channeling like the same emotions, the same, like it's what, like we're all here together. We're all here together for a reason. What brought us together, why we are all here, and how we're all just channeling all this positive, good stuff at the exact same time. It's just very cool to me.
And that like touching. Nobody's ever, it's powerful. It's powerful. And I so appreciate that. And man, and how lucky we are to be able to like to be people who practice yoga, who get to practice yoga like together.
Yeah.
Thank you. Ben, I know Ben.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, yeah, I'm making my way through the book, and I, I really appreciate how um the eight limbs of yoga is kind of laid out, and then you have the practical examples or exercises. And the first limb with the yama, it did resonate with me because um you know self-reflecting, it was something I kind of did like maybe in an unproductive way. When I was young, I just kind of internalized everything. So 3 days later, I'm like that one comment that they said kind of person. um and over over time, I've kind of let that part go, but then I've incorporated the practice of kind of, choosing my words with myself. I have to, a lot of times, I have to dialogue with myself. If one little example is like, say if I lost my keys or my glasses, or I'm looking actively looking for something, and I look in one place, and then how I'll say in my head, okay, it may be over here, or it's over here. Usually, before I would say, okay, it's over here, and I'll look over there, and I was like, it's not there, and then I'll just get more frantic until I find it, and I'm like, ah. But now it's more like I'm looking for it, and I'll say, okay, I need to look in another spot. It may be over there, and just using that maybe, it gives me an out. Because what happens is, if I tell myself something and it's not true, or something else happens, I kind of clap back at myself. Oh, like, oh, you said it was going to be there. And then, my level of anxious energy and just unproductiveness kind of just spirals out of control. But if I say, hey, it may be over there, and I go over there and it's not there, me just using that maybe, or it might be, or if we look there and it's not there, that kind of thing, it just allows me to be kind to myself when I'm not being I guess perfect or right, or things like that. And that allows me to kind of reflect that to others, because it's like, being kind is just a little bit different than being nice. They can look the same, but kindness actually is me opening my heart and sharing the things like that. And it is just something that um I really liked, especially out of the book. So that's that. I did want to a couple of things. I want to let Greg know I like your hat. That's a really cool hat, Greg. And you know, a point Gabby made regarding religion, spirituality. Since a while ago, I, kind of separated those two. And don't get me wrong, they do intersect and cross. But spirituality is, first and foremost, it's an individual practice, and you can fellowship and congregate with others to practice spirituality. But religion, I really don't, for me personally, it doesn't come in to my spiritual practice. I can go to religious gatherings and study religious, because the texts, religious texts all over the world and all the pantheons, those are actually really, really good sources of information. So studying those is really good. But as far as the spiritual practice, I kind of separate that from religion. That's that.
Thank you, Ben. That was some some internal work you were doing. So thank you for sharing. We'll go Hope next. Might be frozen, but it looks like she might be typing. So Hope, while we're waiting, I hope if you can hear us, we'll shoot it over to Trevor and then get you after Trevor. If Trevor's there.
Hey, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
I can hear you.
I'm
No.
having some technical difficulties.
You're fine.
Okay, and I'm about to, my battery's about to die too. I've been on my phone all day. So I'll make it quick and then I'll jump on to charge my phone. So a lot of the things that everyone else has said has kind of resonated with me too. I'm really enjoying the book. But at first I thought, wow, this is going to be another book about self-help or religion or whatever. And I'm not like a super religious person. I'm kind of with Gabby. Like every time I hear those kind of things, I was really raised Lutheran and all of the things, did all the things that I was supposed to do when I was growing up, according to my parents. But this is a different type of religious experience for me. And something that was said on, that Austin said on Tuesday, he said Gus. And that to me, I don't know if it will help Gabby or anyone else, but that to me, because I was like, well, who is Gus? And it was God, universe, and spirit, right? And so that to me, I replace all of the things that say God with Gus, and it resonates better with me, because I feel I feel a huge connection to yoga every time I practice. I have been going to yoga on Monday for whatever reason, because that's the day that I found the teacher that I really enjoyed. And I did that in Germany when I lived in Germany and DC. And then when I came out here, I found, a class on Monday night, and it just happens to be about the same time and every single location I've been in. But so for me, Gus is my spirit animal, if you will. But so I think some of the things that resonated with me were living a simple life, having less is more. It's not about gathering things, because there are a lot of people are like keep up with the Joneses kind of thing, and I might have been there at one point. But now I don't feel like I need all those. I don't need things, and in the book, it talked about how, buying things. And then if you're in debt because you bought those things and it wasn't like a house or a car, like it's all these little things that you just accumulate. It doesn't make you happy. happiness is more of an internal thing. And you have to have that to kind of project outwardly. I like how the book is set up, with the yamas and the niyamas. I just started into the niyamas, but I liked the yamas and connecting to your true nature. I liked that section of the book, and it seems to be a really good read. And I'll reiterate what everyone else said. Like, I feel like this is a book that everyone should read. I'm going to buy it for my daughters for Christmas because they all do yoga. And I think it kind of solidifies why we do yoga. Why I do yoga. But there were a couple things I just wanted to, I put a little pin in because I wanted to, they just hit home for me. And I'm not gonna be able to find them now. One of them was, every time we choose thoughts of gratitude, positivity, and peace, we create a ripple of peacefulness on the planet that affects innumerable others. And I feel like right now that also resonated with me because of the election. And I have a friend that's really struggling, and I'm normally the one that's struggling, and I'm trying to help her not struggle so much. And now I realize why, she thought I was such a hard-headed person. But and the other one is, instead of being afraid or pushing difficulty away, we embrace it as a gift from the abundant universe. So those two things just really kind of really touched me when I was reading the book. So I think I'll stop going on and on. Those are my 2 cents.
Oh, you don't have to stop, Hope.
No, I will keep going. I mean, this book really touched me in a way that hasn't, like, it just really made yoga kind of just make sense. So thank you.
And you said you're not done yet?
No, I just got to, I just started the second chapter or part 2, limb 2. So I kind of felt like the book, and I can't remember who it was that said, I was having a lot of technical difficulties getting on today, but like the limbs are like branches, and then the branches are like sprouts of different things, because I thought it was going to be 8 limbs, like, period. And it's like different sections of the branches. And so anyway, I love it.
Good. Well, I can't wait for you to finish, because I think the ending, those of you who have read it, I'm sure the ending just really, really ties it all in. So thank you, Hope. I really appreciate that. And Trevor, your final one.
Like the book. I enjoyed reading about all the limbs, and just really good things to contemplate and keep in mind, and especially leading towards meditating. And now we kind of have that guide. I'm personally going to try meditating tomorrow, and that just gives a great thing at your fingertips to know you can go look at, to just get going. I would say my favorite one to read was Satya, the one on purity and simplicity, and just how much we are bombarded with in modern society, and how much of it is just habit and can actually be removed, and leaves a lot of brain space and mental space and kind of soul space for other things to take their place instead of being on autopilot. And I really liked, or it was kind of profound to me, the part where I was talking about how being on the self-help train and just constantly engaging with different materials and, advice from other people and books and podcasts can be its own form of ego. That was pretty powerful for me to think about. And then I really liked, let me find it, I wrote it down. Oh, wrong app, but it was, I can't remember which limb it was, but the expect a lot from yourself and little from others. And I'm sure you can overdo that, but I found that just a really good thing for me to think about personally. So that's it.
Thank you, Trevor. Well, you guys, I mean, that was an awesome check-in. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I I just think that a lot of things that you guys hit on are like my book club discussion questions, which is just awesome. And this book is I mean, mine's like, so you probably can't see it, but it's like so beat up because I read through it so often and go back and highlight and cross things out, just like all of you have already started doing. A lot of these texts that we talk about in teacher training and this one too, they're not meant to be read once and then tossed to the side, like, okay, well, I got all that. Now I'm good to go on in the world. They are to come back to over and over again, the more things that happen to you, or if you the things that happen in the world or whatever's happening in your yoga practice or when you start teaching, this hopefully becomes like a good tool, a resource for you to use over and over, to theme classes or just to like reinvigorate your practice. So I hope that you do use it or get some inspiration to use something like it in your teaching. This is a really cool book because I don't know if Laura and Austin have told you, but they actually did a teacher training. In Austin, I don't remember specifically what they were going for, but they were doing a teacher training in Austin, and Jenny Lee was in their teacher training. And so they know her personally. And she actually, at the teacher training, she said, oh, I have a book signing tonight at this bookstore. And then their whole Sangha went to it and it was for this book. And so they brought it back here and they're like, we can use this in teacher training. So if that makes it even more valuable to you, sometimes she actually, I think, I don't know if you guys know Cheryl Case, but she did a book club and like Jenny Lee like zoomed in and was there to like talk. Because she's written several books. So that's just kind of a cool cameo connection to the book. But yeah, that I have a good connection to this book. I think that a lot of you said it, like it takes we'll talk about the Yoga Sutras, but it takes this really dense, like not actually dense, it's actually really short, but really like not religious, old, like one of the oldest scriptures in the world, and she takes it and she makes it applicable to anybody, even if you don't practice yoga. Like Alexis and said, like everybody can take this book. It's very user friendly for anybody to come and take what they want out of it. And so I hope that you did get a chance to do some of the practices in here. And if you didn't, know that they're always there for you to come back to. If you haven't finished the book, I'm actually going to be with you on Sunday morning for part 2. Hopefully you all can finish by then, but you are going to do a little activity with that. That's just going to have you know all the yamas and the niyamas, but we'll go over them tonight too. Are we good with taking just like a little break? Do you all need like, okay, perfect. Is 4 minutes okay? Is that enough time to be back at 7? Awesome. All right. And then you will need your manual. Or if you want to follow along in your manual, we're going to be on page 31. If you don't have it, I can project it on the screen here, so don't worry about that. But if you want to follow along or take notes, page 31 on your manual. All right. Is this your first Thursday night, isn't it? Now you're like in it for the, it's your second Thursday night. Okay. So you know how this goes. All right. Awesome. So like I said before, this this book comes from the Yoga Sutras. And you've all watched the yoga history video. Does Amber talk about the sutras in there at all? Maybe a little bit.
A little bit, but
A
not
little
so
bit.
much. Yeah, she talks like big picture, like
Okay.
bird's eye view of it. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, which you'll get a little bit more in this discussion, but the sutras are really, really old texts. So one of the oldest texts in the world. And they think there's like some debate about when it was written. We're thinking like between 200, 400 BCE. So like very, very ancient texts. And they were written by Patanjali, who was a sage, an ancient sage. And there's like, because they're so old and we know so little about that period of time, there's some debate about whether he was like if it was written by one person or maybe it was like three different people. But it's just like that's just what we have. So if you look at if you see the sutras, there's 195 of them, and or 196, excuse me, there's 196 of them, and they're just sentences. And so I actually have like all my sutra books normally, but I've been snowed in, not at my house because I don't want to leave. And so I will bring them to you for on Sunday though, and you can flip through them and look through them because there's books, there's commentary written on them so that you can take these words that were written in Sanskrit and then have somebody who's researched them thoroughly comment on them and explain them a little bit more thoroughly. So the sutras were written as sort of like a reference manual for people who were in India at the time practicing yoga. And there's three kind of commentaries, I want to say. No, I don't want to say that. There's three different books. There's four books in the sutras. And the first one was written for somebody who is very far along in their practice, who can take who's already practicing these sort of practices, and then they can sort of go beyond that. They have a little bit more knowledge and they've already been practicing what they need to practice to get to the goal of yoga, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The second book is where we find the 8 limbs of yoga. And this was written a little bit more for the, like us, basically. So those of us who I practice yoga, I like how I feel after a yoga class maybe, but I want to learn more. And so that's where it's broken down a little bit more so that somebody who doesn't have access or who wasn't, born with coming from a life where they already have practiced this, can more easily access this sort of lifestyle. And then the third book was written for, they call it the mystic. So it gets a little bit more spiritual, a little bit more above, it's called samadhi. So when you reach that kind of final stage of Nirodha or the goal of yoga. So sutra actually means to suture. And so they're threads of knowledge that you use as a reference manual, sort of for life. So they're the philosophy of yoga. And there's two that I'm going to put into the chat here. And they're the first two sutras. And it is, I wrote them down. So the first word is Hatha Yoga Anushasanam. And if you want to say it, I would have you guys say it if we were in person. But Hatha Yoga Anushasanam. I'm just making sure I'm spelling it right. And that means now to practice of yoga begins. And that's how the sutras start. And that word atha is very pronounced in Sanskrit when you pronounce it, because it's now. Because even though it's starting now, that now can be whenever you're starting your practice. And so that's Sutra 1.1. And then Sutra 1.2 is Yogaha, Chitta, Vritti, Nirodha. So Yogaha, Chitta, Vritti, Nirodha. And that means essentially when the mind begins to still, when the monkey mind begins to still, is when we reach Nirodha, or the goal of yoga. When you did read or watch the video that Amber showed you, did she talk about, does anybody know what the goal of yoga is? Or why we practice yoga, what we're trying to achieve?
Liberation from suffering.
Exactly, Hannah. Yes. So we are trying to achieve this liberation from suffering, whatever that means to you, or to your practice. And that can look different day by day. But yes, the liberation from suffering is what we're trying to achieve. And so now the yoga begins, is the first sutra. And then the second sutra says, when the stilling of the mind stuff, or when the mind stuff begins to still, is when that is achieved, when yoga is achieved. And so essentially, I mean, all we're trying to do is still the mind and then liberation, right? If only it were that easy. And then it could only be 2 sutras, but there's 196 of them because it's not that easy. So that's where the Yoga Sutras begin. And they're all in Sanskrit, obviously, when Patanjali wrote them. And then when you do read the commentary, there's translations and more description about all of them. Of the 196 sutras, 3 of them are on asana, which, do you guys remember what limb asana is, or what it means?
It's the third limb, and it's the poses, right? The posture.
Exactly. Yes. So I'm assuming, or like my yoga practice started because I wanted to start taking yoga. It mostly starts as like a physical practice. That's what gets us into yoga. And then we realized, like, oh man, there's something about these poses that I do that makes a difference, aside from when I'm like running or working out or lifting weights, right? And it's all of this other stuff, all of the other 8 limbs, and even beyond that. And so of all 196 sutras, 3 of them are on asana, which probably tells you how dense they are. If you're very interested in the sutras, the 300-hour teacher training goes very much in depth in them. You go through all of them through that teacher training. And you can get commentaries. Like I said, I'll bring them on Sunday so you guys can see what they look like, and you can use them for our activities that day too. So Patanjali wrote these sutras, and then so book 2 starts with the 8 limbs, and that's where we'll kind of get into the manual, which are on page 31 in your manual. Let me try and find it. There it is. Okay. So the 8 limbs are, they come from the tradition of Ashtanga yoga, and Ashta means 8, and Anga means limbs. So it's a literal translation, Ashtanga, 8 limbs. And they're kind of laid out in a list here. They go in this order, like I said, for a reason. Everything is the Yoga Sutras really like to list things, so in the list is for a reason. And so all 8 limbs are what you practice in practicing Ashtanga yoga. And there is a really cool, like, there's cool depictions of the 8 limbs. Somebody mentioned, Hope was mentioning like a tree with branches that show the 8 limbs. I've seen it in a wheel that kind of follow along. So if you find a visual of this that makes sense to you, it doesn't have to go in a list like this. Sometimes the other visuals make a little bit more sense. But we'll just kind of go through them. So yama is the first limb, and that is the individual restraints. So yama literally means restraint. There's 5 of them. There's 5 yamas. So from the one branch of yama, there branches out 5 yamas, and they are social disciplines essentially that we adhere to. So our guidelines socially that we adhere to. We start with the yamas because we need to adhere to them within ourselves first before we can practice all of the other limbs. And then from there, that list goes in order to practice as well. And so this is sort of the place to start to change. And then from the yama comes the niyama, which are observances, practices that sustain the change. So in yama, you start the change, and then niyamas are those external practices, sort of dealing a little bit more with the external world, a little less internal, and that's how you sustain the yamas. So we start with the yamas and then go into the niyamas. Asana is the postures. Not much more to say there. It's just all the postures that we practice in yoga. And then pranayama is breath control. And so you see that word come up again, yama, which is restraint. Prana is our life force. And so we are restraining the breath. And so I think it was Hope also that was talking about breathing and how the belly is supposed to, the belly rises when you inhale, and most of us don't breathe that way, right? Especially when we're under pressure or we're feeling a little bit more in our heads or whatever's going on. The breath tends to be the first thing that kind of guides how you feel. So as you start to sort of release these practices, the breath is usually the first thing to sort of release. And then coming back to the breath, practicing that breath control, that breath restraint is how we sort of calm the mind. So yoga is chitta, yogaha chitta vritti nirodha. So we can start to calm the mind by using that breath control. And there's different practices you can do with pranayama. True pranayama is that restraint of the breath, so holding the breath, feeling the pauses in between the inhales and exhales, but any sort of mindfulness, bringing mindfulness to the breath, as you all know, is going to make some sort of change to your nervous system. So we go yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, and then pratyahara is the next one, and that is sensory withdrawal or turning on to the internal world. So drawing the energy inward so that we can block the external to turn inward. And that can look a lot of different ways as well. The next 3 are sort of in line with meditation, but there's just different nuances that distinguish them from one another. So the first one is dharana, which is concentration on a single pointed focus. And this in your manual says on a sacred object, but you are the one who determines that object. So there's different sort of concentrations that you can do, like drishti in a yoga class, or focusing on, like a lot of times when people do turn inward and start to bring into mind meditation. There might be something that you meditate on, like a tantric meditation. If you've all ever seen like the geometric designs, there's meditations guided on those, or even a guided meditation with a visual, or if you do use a mala or a rosary or anything like that, whenever you're focusing on something that is sacred to you, that is when it becomes concentrated and you start to practice this limb, dharana. And then dhyana is when the single pointed focus becomes effortless. So when you can meditate on that single pointed, that sacred object for a long period of time, and it becomes a more flow state, there's less interruption, and you can focus more for a longer period of time. So the distinction between dharana and dhyana is the amount of time and when it starts to become effortless. So you might be stuck on dharana for a while before you can get to dhyana, and then you practice dhyana, and then it becomes samadhi. So samadhi is absorption, and that is when the mind becomes perfectly seamless, and it becomes sameness with the object, and your mind is a reflection of the object. So samadhi, it is a branch of Ashtanga yoga. And then from that branch, sorry, the dog has a squeaky toy. Yeah, sorry, but it is I know the pronunciation with the Sanskrit can become a little hazy at some points. But so samadhi is one of the branches of yoga, and then it branches off into 7 other layers of samadhi. So most of us have experienced samadhi at some point. You just may not have called it that if you didn't know anything about it. And it is, it's a tricky little thing, because once you're in it, once you realize you're in it, you're out of it. If that makes sense. Because you've now not become sameness with the objects. You're now you're in it's the difference between the big S self, or capital S self, and little s self. So once you realize that you're not that you're in the samadhi, you become a little bit more attached to like the gunas, or the world that we're in here, and less in the sameness, if that makes any sense. I know it's a little bit like on 7/17 on a snowy night. It seems like a lot probably, but just distinguishing the difference between the last 3 limbs of Ashtanga yoga. Are there any questions about the distinguish? Yeah.
Oh, I have a question. For samadhi, right? Is that something that we can attain like once in a while? Because I mean, like, who lives in samadhi? Maybe the Dalai Lama. Like, it's that something that we connect and then go back to our daily life. Like,
that is like exactly, yes. So you can experience like moments of samadhi. Like I said, we probably all have. Like maybe I've heard of it happening during. I've never had a child, but it was like when you like are birth a child and you see your child for your first time, or in shavasana. Like if you've ever felt in shavasana, like you've experienced that some sort of like other layer of meditation or bliss. Another word for samadhi is bliss. So when you feel that perfect stilling of the mind, that is a moment of samadhi. And just like you said, Hannah, like people who are in samadhi, they don't even like they are floating, they are still, they are like, there's very few people who are in that state of mind all the time. Thank you for asking that. Yes. So samadhi is like, it's the utmost layer, and then from there there's 7 other layers of samadhi. So you can be in one layer of samadhi and then float back down to, wherever we are in earth in this time, in this space. A good way to think of like these last 3 in the single pointed focus, you'll get a lot of metaphors on a pond with the reflection of the moon above it. And so when you're in samadhi, you can perfectly see the reflection of the moon in the pond. And then our vrittis, or our mind stuff, or our monkey mind, is what's going to be the ripples in that pond that distort the reflection. And so when you're in dhyana, that moon starts to become more clear. The pond starts to still, and then you can see a better reflection of the moon in the pond. And the more vritti that we have, the more chatter we have going on in our mind, the more distorted that moon is going to look. It's the ripples in the pond. If that helps you kind of see where what we're trying to achieve with the mind. So these all seem like a little bit like, yes, maybe only the Dalai Lama or whoever has achieved samadhi and can be in samadhi, but we do see these limbs in our day-to-day life and even in the Cambio sequence. So I'll throw it out to you guys. We're gonna pick where we see each limb within the Cambio sequence. And I won't do the yamas and the niyamas, but this one, I'll start with the easiest one. Here do we see asana in the yoga sequence, the Cambio sequence? You can throw it in the chat or unmute yourself. Where do we see asana? Yep.
In the practice.
The practice. All of it. Every single posture that you're doing. It was not a trick question. Yes. Every single posture is asana. Where do you see pranayama in the Cambio sequence?
In the Ujjayi breath.
Exactly. Yep. Ujjayi breath. So bringing to mind, bringing some intention to your breath. There is a little bit of restraint with the constriction in the back of the throat. Wonderful. What about pratyahara? Where do we see pratyahara within the Cambio sequence?
Samastitihi, maybe?
Yeah, samastitihi. So drawing your hands to heart center is already drawing that inward. Closing your eyes, setting an intention. Where
Child's
else?
pose too, I think.
Absolutely. Yes. That's almost full withdrawal of the senses. Your head is down. Yeah, shavasana.
Shavasana.
Yep. I think child's pose is kind of to me, it's like the most visually, the best visual representation of pratyahara, because you are fully withdrawn from the senses. You can't see, you're drawing inward. Where do we see dharana? So that single pointed focus.
Utkatasana.
Oh, can you explain
I don't know.
that?
Oh, well, I don't know. Like there are some poses that you have to be like the drishti, like looking at a single like focus so you don't go on this to the sides or something. No?
Exactly. Yes, and Erin put it in the chat. Yep. I thought you were just really excited about drishti. Yep, drishti. So I do like Hannah brought up Utkatasana because I mean, who likes Utkatasana? Maybe you do, I don't. But when you are in those postures that you don't like, or when you need to balance, finding that one point that you can focus on. And even though like a point on the ground might not be sacred, it's still that single pointed focus. And when you're in the posture, you're already practicing all of these. Hope asked what was pranayama. So that was the breath control in a class, and it's the Ujjayi breath. Thank you for asking. So dharana is the drishti. What about dhyana? Where do we see where that single point of focus might become a little bit more flowy? This one's a little trickier.
Like in the practice, where do we see
Yeah.
could it be when we do one breath per movement?
Yeah, totally. Yep. And Ashlyn said that too, where we flow one breath per movement. Yeah.
I was thinking specifically to like the like kind of the warrior dance. Like that's really somewhere you can lose yourself a little bit.
100%. Yes. Thank you for saying that. Bethia, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so when we start to connect breath to movement is where that flow state begins to happen. And there's a very specific reason why in vinyasa classes, you do sun A and you do sun B. And if you haven't already talked about this, you'll talk about it a lot in sequencing. But those specific sequences, the warrior dance and sun A, are meant to get you into a state where you don't necessarily have to think. You already know what you're going to do. You know what's coming up, and connecting the breath to the movement is going to get you to a more meditative state. Awesome job. And then last one, where do we see samadhi in the Cambio sequence? Or glimpses of samadhi.
Shavasana.
Yep. Shavasana. That's the whole goal. So every single class leads into Shavasana. A well-rounded class is going to have you be in that sattvic state where you are able to let go, surrender, and find hopefully some bliss. Good job. All right. Does that make the 8 limbs seem a little bit more attainable or a little less intimidating, maybe? Hopefully. Are there any questions on them? On any of them? Oops. Oh man. Sorry, guys. Cool. All right. Are we ready to get into the yamas and the niyamas? All right. So the yamas, like we said, are the universal disciplines. So these are the restraints that we practice individually, and we start with these because we need them in order to externalize the niyamas. And so I really like how, well, Jenny Lee specifically, when she names her chapters, she uses kind of the, I want to say positive, but I don't mean that as in like, you know, sunshine and rainbows, because we all know that's not what it is. I mean the positive in that, like in your manual, ahimsa is called non-violence, and so that would be the negative, just because the non in front of it. But she uses the positive language as in peacefulness. So ahimsa, non-violence, peacefulness. Anytime you see that a or a in a Sanskrit, it means not or the absence of, and then himsa is violence, killing, judging, harming. And so this is the baseline. This is where we all need to start before we can practice any of the other yamas. We have to start with non-violence, because this is going to be our first step into eliminating fear, ignorance, and ignorance in the sense of like self-ignorance, like bit capital S self and ignorance. And I do like how she says, like on page 31, at the very top, moving away from the problem and toward the solution is one way to practice it. Letting go of the need to be right, respect for yourself and others. And so this is just a way for us to see love and everything else in the world. Did anybody, I know a lot of you guys that like resonated with this one. Does anybody want to speak on it or tell their experience with it? More than you already have.
I can. I don't know.
Thank
I'm pretty chatty tonight, so
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in Colombia, South America, and culturally, and this is just fresh in my mind because I went to Colombia like 4 months ago for the summer, and the way that, you know, I see like my uncles and my aunts and my dad, like, and myself, like we speak to each other, like we're always sounds like we're fighting, but this is like just, you know, passionate. It's very passionate, and but it can be like at some point, you know, it's like why do we need to live, like talk to each other like there's something wrong, or like we're fighting all the time? And you know, like going back to ahimsa, right? Like that negative talk, or like the non-violent communication, I think is, for me, like that really, you know, just struck home, or called my attention, or resonated with me, because yes, if I am not aware of my belief systems, or how I grew up, or the way, you know, like everything that I carry on from culturally. And my husband is from New York, he's American, and you know, we're just like, I realize I bring that to the table if I'm not, if I choose not to be aware. And in that awareness of understanding how I communicate, and there's different ways to communicate, and I can choose non-violence communication over culturally communication, or over my experiences, or over my belief systems that I grew up with. It changes the game. Like it changes the way that I interact with other people, and how I feel afterwards. And I never saw, like, it was part of my life growing up, you know, but then I've been working on myself for the last 10 years. And so when I went back home, going back to that, it's just like so interesting to me now, because I'm like, wow, this is the normal. Like this is how I grew up, and like it's normal. Like we don't see it until we work on ourselves, I think. And not to like judge that. Like I don't go home and be like, oh, Dad, why are you talking? Like I'm not like that, but it's just I don't know, the beauty is like I can choose how to react, and I can choose how to speak, and I can choose my words and the energy behind them. And I'm just going on a rant, but yeah, that was my example.
No, I love that. And I think that's so important to point out. And like Anna said in here, it is, and Hannah, you were touching on, like, it is your choice, right? How you react, or how you speak, the words you choose to say. And I
Yeah.
just love how Anna said it helps my filter that you see the world through. Did you want to say something, Anna?
Oh no, I was just, yeah, that's what I think it really comes down to. And I think starting to see that filter, like through that filter, helps you open your eyes to the rest of the stuff. Like I think that's really why it is number one, because you can't progress until you've stopped harming. If that makes sense.
That's right, exactly it. And that's with yourself too. Like it has to start with yourself. I think the person that I speak most harmfully to is myself, by far. So it starts with the internal dialogue, and then once you get better at that, then you can kind of translate that into the world. And I just think this one is so, like, it's where we can, like, it's the one that we see the most in the world. Unfortunately, we see a lot of violence, and violence not just in like physical violence that we think of, but just you know, like when you're driving, how are you practicing ahimsa when somebody's in front of you at the grocery store blocking the aisle? Like how are we um how are we reacting, or how are you practicing ahimsa, or when your reaction when somebody is causing harm to you, or when somebody's reacting rudely to you, like your reaction to it is a good way to practice. Yes, hope. Only thing we can control most of the time is the way we react. And I've had to practice a lot of that this week as well. There's so many things out of our control, but our reaction is how we can control those things. Awesome. So this is the one where if you get past ahimsa, you're like, okay, I'm feeling good. And then we get to satya, and you're like, maybe I need to come back to ahimsa, because satya is all about truthfulness, truthfulness or integrity. I love these these 4 questions. Anytime my 7th graders say basically anything, I ask them these 4 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And is it the right time? But I think we can feel this in our relationships or anything. This is one of my favorite ones, just finding truth in a lot of things, living and speaking your truth. She has a good, on page 43, kind of towards the middle, she ties together Satya and Ahimsa, Jenny Lee, by saying, practicing the combination of Satya and Ahimsa, we maintain an open heart rather than indulge the natural tendency to shut down or fire back. We create safe space for each other by listening without judgment and honoring conflicting feelings. Through Satya, we seek understanding regardless of personal feelings, and in mutual vulnerability, we build authentic relationship. Any questions or thoughts on Satya? And you don't have to have any. We do have a lot to get through. Oops. The next one, this one is actually probably my favorite, Asteya, so non-stealing. And by favorite, I mean the one I need to practice the most, because this can go in a lot of different ways. So there's that word again, which means not, or the absence of. Steya is stealing, so Asteya. And there's so many things we can steal, which Jenny Lee does get into. On page 52, she says, by reflecting on ways in which we take from others on a daily basis, we can make adjustments and practice offering more than we expect in return. By expecting little from others and much from ourselves, we enter the practice of Asteya, which somebody already quoted that one. There's a lot of different ways we can steal. So stealing time by being late, stealing words or thoughts, or stealing, like it says in your manual, like free from the cravings of wealth, fame, and pleasure. This kind of goes hand in hand with abundance, because the more, like the Amazon, the more we buy from Amazon, the more we're like, oh, I can just order this and it's going to be super cheap. But like, what are we taking from rather than what can we give to? Yeah. Questions or thoughts on Asteya?
I like the like assuming that we already have abundance, seeing what we already have. And I know that like sounds so easy, like, oh, think of things you're grateful for, but when you think of it as the earth or the universe is giving you literally everything that you need, and you're alive, you're still here, so like just thinking of things like that instead of just I have what I need but I have an abundance is like that was really powerful to me.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's a hard practice to realize that, like realizing the small and the big things that you steal physically, metaphorically, or it kind of brings to mind where we need to change. I tie this a lot in with like boundaries, like boundary setting, which was something I have an issue with. So like what are people stealing from me? What am I taking from others? How am I letting other people influence my feelings or whatever? But this is a big one. I could spend all night on that.
I would say too, just real quick, that I think with that one, the one thing I kind of struggled with this one was like we have become too individualistic. So reading this from a Western standpoint, it can
Yeah.
become kind of isolating rather than thinking of it as we're a community, we're all giving to each other, and we should be able to receive graciously while not stealing, you know.
Yeah. And it's hard, and as in a Western world, it's hard for us to kind of distinguish those or feel okay with that. Ashlyn, I love what you put in there because this one also comes back to that internal, like, are you stealing from yourself by giving more than you can? Yeah. And being balanced in your wants and what you give. That's deep. I love that. Yes, keeping your internal peace to keep yourself balanced in your wants and what you give. It's not easy. Next one is Brahmacharya. So Brahma is the supreme being, a god in Hindu, and then Charya is a course, action, or conduct. So in the tradition of like ancient India, this was sort of tied in with celibacy, which in our world we don't necessarily relate it to that as much, but this is our restraints or moderation. Thinking of I think moderation is my best definition for this, rather than celibacy. Renunciation, if that resonates with you, is another way to think of this, but it's how you use your energy, or I like moderation. And this can be moderation through things or through thoughts or through how you serve the world. Again, tying into the non-stealing, like the boundary setting, appropriate use of one's energy. And on page 65, at the very top, Jenny Lee says, in life, this means we prioritize important life goals and say no to extra engagements or tasks that distract us from them. Sometimes it means eliminating relationships that drain us. And so I think that is a little bit more in our world, how we can kind of translate Brahmacharya to make it make sense to us. If you've ever needed to do one of these, it's not easy to do, to eliminate a relationship or say no to something, but focusing on your goal or what you need and then expending your energy in that way. Any questions or thoughts on Brahmacharya?
I have a bit of a question, and it just came up just because it's something I haven't said out loud, but I thought of this because what if I'm that friend that needs to be cut out for whatever reason? But it's like, what if I'm that friend that needs to just, and I guess you never know the situation. There's so many different situations that it has to be a pretty severe thing, but it's like, you can no longer help that person. Or like, what if they're the ones who really need that friend or example, or I don't know. So to me, that's a little interesting because I both get it and don't get it, because I think maybe we've all been that person for someone, and maybe that's what has to happen, but maybe like, I don't know, I guess it makes me sad a little bit thinking that way.
I kind of go into that spiral too, but then you got to think like other people have their agency, and so like trying not to be hard on yourself, or like, you know, it not being self-harming about it, like, because I couldn't lay there at night and think about a million things that I've done that has wronged somebody or drained their energy or whatever. And I have to say, like, I absolutely understand what you're saying there. Like, oh my gosh, what if I am that person? It is a scary and kind of sad thought.
It's also, oh, sorry.
Sorry, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, sometimes, you know, even if that just might not be the relationship that served you. So you might not have been draining and I'm not saying that you like this has ever happened to you or you specifically. I'm not like speaking to anybody, but because I've had this talk too, like because I've had friendships that there was never a conversation, but it just like it's no we're like it's no longer a relationship, and like, well, maybe that just wasn't what was going to serve me or for any reason. Ashley, what were you gonna say?
Oh, when I was like it thinking about like ending relationships because they no longer serve you, or like being that like, or like Bethia said, like being concerned that you're going to be that person. When I was in high school, me and one of my best friends had like this giant falling out, and I was really broken up about it. And I was in the same headspace. I didn't see who said it, but like that, what could I have done to fix it? And my mom said sometimes relationships are like seasons, they just have to come to their natural end. And it made me realize like, it is not always this person doesn't serve me, this terrible thing happened between us, this was a giant fight. Sometimes it's just like, exactly like Bethia said in the chat, like it's knowing your worth, having self-respect, and also sometimes it's just like it's like a season. There's no reason for it to end. There's no big dramatic shift unless you're Colorado and you snow 4 feet for 3 straight days. Um, but like it just, there's no reason, there's no, I think because in the Western world, we're such an individualistic society. And I was watching one of those videos. I know this is a rant and I'm very sorry, but I was watching one of those videos on on Instagram that's just the AI voice reading out the Reddit stories. And one of them was about how like you just sometimes it's a gradual end, and then in 4 months you realize I haven't talked to that person, and then in 6 months you realized it has little to no impact on your life. So it's not that either of you is a bad person or a bad friend or the energy was bad or you're bad, it's just that you off into the ether, and like you can be like, I wish this person the best on their journey forward, but I'm not part of that.
And that's like going back to all the other yamas that we've talked about, right? Like the language that you speak around it, the awareness you have on it, because your awareness is huge, and knowing that that could happen, or your reaction to it is huge. So thank you so much for asking that. I think that's it's important. Awesome. Anything else on brahmacharya? Yes, thank you, Anna. No need to apologize for speaking. Yes. Last yama is a parigraha, and this is that non-grasping, non-hoarding, non-possessiveness. And once again, we see the which means not, or the absence of parigraha, hoarding or collecting. And so this can be sort of tied into brahmacharya as well. This is going deep into fears or limiting beliefs. If I don't know if Amber talked about samskaras, but those are the impressions that have been left on us through life. And a parigraha is a huge part of that, where why are we collecting these thoughts or these trinkets or whatever we're holding on to, being aware of why you're holding on to it, and then using only what you need. So although we might tend to associate hoarding with physical objects, this can be a lot of thoughts or philosophies or anything that you're holding on to that's not necessarily serving you. Any questions or thoughts on a parigraha? Right. Are we ready for the niyamas? The internal disciplines. So the first one is saucha. So saucha, it's purity, cleanliness, cleanliness of the body, cleanliness of the mind, our choices. So this is to do with bathing. Pranayama is actually how we cleanse our internal, our inside body, our life force, our life force, all those channels that are moving through us. Our choices and what we take in physically, what we watch, what we listen to, what we eat, and this is what creates harmony with our bodies and within the world. So a lot of thoughts on like, what like what am I like veganism and stuff like that, like, or what eating with the seasons or plant-based, whatever. There's many different ways that we can practice saucha and different extremes that we can go to with this. But cleanliness of the vessel, body, and mind. Any questions or thoughts on saucha?
Just a thought more than a question.
Yeah.
But like seeing those, I know I'm on Instagram too much when you're on Instagram too much when you bring it up in yoga class twice. So it's time to put my little timer back on Instagram to remind me to get the heck off. But like those videos of people who do and don't experience periods, everybody goes through like their monthly cycles of hormones. So whether you have a uterus or you don't, or you experience periods or you don't, you have that monthly cycle of hormones. Like even people who are assigned male at birth have monthly cycles of hormones. And a big trend, at least on my page for a really long time, was eating with those, like finding foods. So that's what it reminds me of a lot. And it also reminds me of those people who were doing girl dinner for a very long time, where they were like, I love girl dinner. I love eating a bunch of snacks until I'm full rather than having to figure out a full meal. It's my favorite thing to do. Full meals stress me out. So I will just eat snacks until I'm full. But people who were like, girl dinner gives you away, like the idea of girl dinner and the popularization of it and like the mainstreamification or whatever you want to call it is very much just eat what you're craving when you're craving it in moderation and until you're full. Like, so pure, like we were talking about, like purity of food doesn't always mean like having a keto diet or a specific diet. I couldn't think of any more diets. But it's kind of like purity of food can just be what you need in that moment.
Like intuitive eating, kind of?
Yes. Thank you. I couldn't see who said that, but thank you. Also my dog is it's not my dog, but the dog you keep seeing, his name is Jerry. He keeps staring at me judgmentally every time I talk.
It's just interested in what you're saying. I do, yeah. I think that mindful or intuitive eating is like a huge part of this, and in all the yamas, really, because like realizing why you're eating that stuff in that moment. Like my go-to is sugar when I'm stressed, and like, like how long is this going to satisfy me? Is this the dopamine I'm looking for? That sort of thing. Like that's huge. And there's so much on, if you're interested in like Ayurveda or like seasonal eating, the things that we put into our body, in our mind and our physical body, like through our digestive system. Yes, hope you can eat that. Is huge, and it does make a difference. It can make a huge difference. So I do appreciate you bringing that up, Ashlyn. I don't think we'll get through all the niyamas tonight, which is good, which is fine. I love candy and Taco Bell. I love that. But I do want to make sure that so we actually might stop here. We're going to stop at Santosha, and then on Sunday we'll start with Santosha. Because I do want to be able to, because I do have a little bit of homework for you guys to do before Sunday. So, are there any like burning questions about the next 4? I don't want to like leave you hanging on a cliffhanger. So if there's any burning questions about the next 4 we will go over them, but if you want. Awesome. Okay. So for your homework, since hopefully you will be mostly through True Yoga before Sunday, or if not all the way through, and I'll put it in the chat here, I'm going to have you pick, which most of you already have one that you're resonating with, but it might be helpful for this activity to pick a different one. But I know that you guys have a lot going on. So if you're already working with one, please stick with that one. But you're going to pick one niyama and one yama to, I'll say, work on for the next 4 days and through your teacher training, if you want to carry it on through your teacher training. Just pick one to work on for the rest of YTT, one that resonates with you, or one that you're maybe like, I don't like this one because I need a lot of practice on it. Like that might be one, if you're willing to put in the work to pick one. Do some of the practices at the end of each chapter if you have time. So even if you just like write that niyama or the yama on a sticky note and place it on your mirror or on the back of your phone, wherever you can see it daily, just pick one to work on and then be ready to share on Sunday how that looked in your life, how it showed up in your life, the kinds of things that you did in order to focus on that specific niyama and yama. Does that sound doable for Sunday? I know it's only 4 days, but you can do a lot in 4 days. Cool. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me tonight. It's really a pleasure. I had such great discussions. So I'm very excited to meet you all in person on Sunday and hopefully get to know you a little bit better. So that's just your only homework that I have for you, and to finish the book. And we'll end with the word. So I'll kind of go through. I'll call your name since your screen might not look like mine. Does anyone want to volunteer to go first?
Curious.
Oh, who said curious? Oh, Bethia, thank you. And Laura, you have yours written. Great.
Grateful.
Hannah.
Warmth. I'm
Oh.
like trying to get warm. My house is really cold.
Oh, you look cozy. Ashlyn.
Hungry.
Yeah. Karen.
Grateful.
Alexis.
Appreciative.
Gabby.
Santosha.
Hope.
Grateful. Sorry, I'm new to the Zoom thing.
You're fine. You're doing awesome.
Programs and my at my agency. Sorry about that.
You're doing amazing. Rachel.
Perspective.
Erin.
Cat.
No, I love it. Greg.
Did you guys see my son?
No.
Oh, he walked in.
Oh.
Sorry, not that we're doing this, but my son came in and he had just taken a bath and he waved. So like you'll see it on the recording.
Oh, I'll have to go back.
Yeah.
Greg.
Cozy.
Ben.
Complete.
Anna
Kind.
and Trevor.
Grateful.
And mine is going to be Snow. Yeah, shout out to everyone's pets. Oh, thank you guys so much. I look forward to being with you on Sunday.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.